Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with MysticGenMara.com, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And tonight on Myth and Tarot, we are going to do a little bit of a 2-for-1. And the reason is we're going over the labors of Hercules, and there's 12 of them. I'm going to cover the 5th, and there's no supernatural creature in it. It's just a task that he did. But the task kind of ties into the 7th, not directly, but there's an association just by what it is. And you'll kind of understand if you notice the Cretan bull as the title. That's going to be the primary, but we also have the Augean stables. So stables, cows, bull, all kind of fit together, so we're doing them together today. So to start off with, that great king that was following Hera's orders, that simp, ordered Hercules to clean the neighboring king's stables. This king of Augeas, he had a lot of things going on. Cleaning stables, if you've ever done it, it's gross. It's not that big of a deal, really. It's just nasty. And so you would think, oh, clean a couple stables out for a demigod, that's going to be quick and easy. Yeah, no. He had to do the entire stables in just one day, which, if you've ever cleaned stables, that's going to take a little bit more if you especially have to do multiples of them. Of course, that would be the challenge that Hera Simp would do. But there's something special about these stables that makes this particular task a godlike labor. King Augeas was very wealthy. It is said he was one of the wealthiest kings in the area. There are parts of the lore that say he was a child of a god, others say that he was simply just a very wealthy king. Either way, he owned massive amounts of cows, bulls, and there's a difference, sheep, goats, horses, basically more than anyone else in Greece at that time. And I'm kind of scared to think of what those numbers could have been, because there were a lot of animals roaming around during that time period. So when you think about it, there were thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of herd animals in and out of the stables. And now add that to the task that Hercules just had to do. But that's not the worst of it. There is lore that says the stables hadn't been properly cleaned in 20 plus years. So you basically have poop concrete at that point, because it just kept compacting and compacting and compacting, and cleaning that all out, yeah, that's where we're getting into that godlike labor. So Hercules on this one, he's kind of being a little bit of smarty pants. It's almost like he got cocky from going through the first 4 labors at this point. So he goes to King Augeas and offers to clean out the stables in a single day. Good offer. But in exchange, Hercules gets paid 1/10 of the king's cattle. That's a significant amount of moo cows. And if you can imagine hundreds, possibly of thousands of cows, he's walking away with 50 to 100,000 cows himself. Like, we're talking a significant chunk of cows. Me personally, I've seen around 1,000 cows in a herd, and that's massive. I could not imagine what Hercules was actually getting paid with when we talk numbers of cows. This is a huge amount of cows, and this is generally seen as massive wealth being bestowed upon Hercules for this task. And of course, King Augeas was just ecstatic with this offer because, like I said, they hadn't been cleaned in a while. And so he agreed to these terms immediately. He sent his son Phyleus with Hercules to observe and report on the task. Sweet. Hercules, thinking ahead, because before he went to the king, he kind of scoped the place out a little bit. he would actually go to a hole, or go to the stables and tear a hole in one of the walls. And then he would go to the opposite side of the stables and tear a hole in that wall. And I'm assuming these walls were kind of watertight, like clay or rock, some kind of stable thing like that. Or why else would you do this? But he then would take, and he did this all in one day, mind you, and dug trenches from 2 large rivers towards the stables. Okay, we're gonna power wash them, I guess. And this would basically mean all the water would flow into the channel. And I've got where to go. I have a picture of this, I think, unless I hid it from myself, which is what it looks like it may have happened. No, that's not the right one. There, maybe. That's the one. I have too many things in my little picture set here today. The water basically did this number through the first hole in the wall, turned around inside of the stables, and I could not imagine that smell. I've been to enough brandings and cattle yards over the years, and that's bad enough, but 20 plus years of that, and this is what you're hitting it with? Yeah, not the most pleasant of aromas. And then it would blast, probably similar to this, out the other side. So out of that second hole in the wall would flow that slurry of poo and everything else. And therefore, Hercules did do what he said he was going to do and completed the task in a single day. And that's just kind of terrifying. But these are cool little babies. But this is some of the brandings that I've been to, and like this is only, 20 to 30 calves. These are calves, mind you. These little guys here, the biggest ones weigh like 120 pounds, maybe 150 depending on when they were born. But this is what's been stomping around in this stable for that many years, literally. And so yeah, he finished the job in a day, yay. But the king got suspicious as to why Hercules just showed up and started, oh, I'll do all this work for you and let me help you out. And, you just have to pay me this little amount over here. It's nothing major. Well, King Augeas decided to poke around a little bit and found out that Eurystheus, that stooge of Hera's, was behind this offer of help. Didn't realize that Eurystheus had sent Hercules to him to fix this problem, thinking it was impossible to do. And it kind of feels like, from the way the legends talk about it and the lore around it, that these two kings didn't like each other, putting it mildly. Like, they might have at one point tried to go to war with each other because they really didn't like each other. But Hercules didn't get paid. Yeah, not the best idea. I mean, you are dealing with a demigod who's, at this point, very cranky about things. His life was not doing so great. So the king basically, when Hercules confronted him about it, was like, take me to court. I'm not doing it. Okay. So Hercules took him straight to court. The judge would actually listen to the king and Hercules and their various grievances. But Hercules had an ace up his sleeve. Do you remember that there was a witness to Hercules cleaning out the stables and a witness to the agreement that the king made? And this wasn't just a minor witness. This was King Augeas's own son. And I bet that didn't go over well. Actually, it didn't. The judge would rule in Hercules' favor. And at that moment, King Augeas was said to have flown into a rage and banished Hercules from the land, and also, by extension, banished his own son as well. Stand up to kings back in the day, and probably not the best decision, but pissing off a demigod's even worse. And I feel like this might have been a good thing for the son, as it is said he went to live with his aunts up north and was raised with morals and ethics. Hercules would take his pay and return to his own land. There's an alternative version that came out couple hundred years after the original story was written, and this one's a little bit more violent, I guess you could call it. And that's when the king refused to pay. Hercules just decided to take something else in payment as well, and the king no longer had breath to use. And instead, the son was placed on the throne of Augeas' former throne. And you can kind of decide which story, but when I was going through kind of the timeline of when the stories were written, the original story was that Hercules would get paid in cattle and the king banished his son, but the king's reign didn't last much longer, no matter how it works out, and then the son would eventually take over the kingdom. And it is said he was way more beneficent than his father was, still exceptionally wealthy, but not as arrogant and ruthless. Is the fifth labor over? Nah, not quite. Eurystheus didn't want to say that this labor counted, and he actually tried to go against the gods because the labors were agreed to with the gods involved. Hercules got paid, and in this pet of Hera's eyes, this task didn't count. I'm saying it did since we actually have a record of it today, so another big L for King Eurystheus. He's racking those things up right and left over here. So the next task, labor, is the Stymphalian birds, and that's the sixth task. I already discussed that and made a video. It's in the description if you want to check it out. Now on to number 7. Stable and cattles for the fifth, and that ties into number 7. And lucky number 7 is the Cretan bull. This is who I'm going to be reading for tonight. I'm not reading for a stable, but I will read for this because this is kind of cool. Minos, king of Crete. And we've talked about Minos before, and you'll find out why that name might ring a bell to you. Ruled his land and the islands around Greece. He was known to be a very powerful king. So powerful that the Athenians would send tributes to stay in his good graces. And tribute originally, before some things that happen here shortly, was basically a tax. They would just be like, we're sending you money, be nice to us, please. And so that's kind of how the relationship between Crete and Athens would go, is Minos was so powerful in his position that they would just like basically pay him to stay over there and leave us alone, but protect us if things went south. And tonight's flavor is the elderberry juniper one. Again, not sponsored, but really good kombucha. There were... Sorry, I just completely lost my place. So, there's some really interesting lore around Minos, and I might actually go into him specifically at some point, because this is the second time he showed up in our discussions here. There is a part of a legend that says that Minos was king of Crete strictly because of the power of Zeus, but not directly. One legend states that Zeus became a giant bull, and this is important shortly, and took Europa, King Minos' mother, to Crete to rule the land as one of the greatest queens. This led to the bull being a patron animal for Crete for many years, centuries possibly later. But this was not all sunshine and steak. Minos, as he was growing up, decided that he wanted to be the king. He wanted to take over for his mother. He wanted to be the ruler of the land. Problem is, he had some brothers. And in those days, if you had a brother and you weren't the firstborn, yeah, things didn't always go so well for those. And it wasn't like bad, it was just you were second fiddle to the king at that point, and Minos had bigger aspirations. So he wanted to be better than his brothers and lay claim to the throne. He went to the temple of Poseidon and swore that he would make a sacrifice. The sacrifice has two different variations, and I could not track down an exact beginning in which one might have been the first one. There's some blurred lines there, so I'll give you both and we'll go from there. The first is that Minos would sacrifice whatever the sea god would send to him. Whatever came out of the ocean, that's what Minos would sacrifice. But the second one, and I'm personally inclined to go with this one just because it sounds more believable, is that Minos asked Poseidon to send a pure white bull that he would sacrifice to the sea god. Oh, well, this is a pure white bull, but this is baby. We're talking about this thing. Can you imagine that coming out of the ocean at you? That would be amazing. Mind you, this isn't small. This guy is going to stand taller than most men at its shoulder. So this is a massive white bull. I mean, why else would we be talking about it if Hercules was going against it? The bull was big. So that's what we're looking at. But Poseidon, I think, was playing a little bit of a dirty trick right here. Or he was testing the loyalty and how far Minos would actually go to stay in his good graces. Because Poseidon didn't send just any white bull. He sent this bull, this big behemoth here. This was said to be one of the most, if not the most, beautiful specimen of a bull. So beautiful and so majestic that Minos could not bring himself to lay a blade to it. Well, you kind of made an agreement. You kind of swore an oath, and now you're going against it? Yeah, that's exactly what Minos did. He decided that he was going to keep this bull and hide it, and sacrifice one of his own bulls that was kind of white-ish, not quite the same, but close enough. And I'll let you guess how Poseidon took that. And if you guessed not great, you would be right. Smart move, angering the god of the deep when you wanted a kingdom, but your kingdom is an island country and it's in the water where the sea god rules. So let's just say Poseidon kind of got mad. Matter of fact, he was furious. And in his rage, he did some interesting things. Some things that I'm... The more I researched into this, the worse it got. He sent his rage, summoned his rage, and basically sent it directly into the bull. And so this bull started to lay waste to the land of Crete, like destruction everywhere, digging up crops, goring people with its massive horns, and tearing trees down, just going crazy all over the land. Really not the most pleasant thing, but see, Poseidon was a little bit more ruthless than just, we're going to destroy your property. He wanted to just destroy Minos. Minos by this point had already become the king, and he was ruling moderately well, but Poseidon was boiling in his watery kingdom. So Poseidon, god of the sea, decided to call upon Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Why would he call upon her? Well, this is where it gets twisted. He asked Aphrodite, ordered Aphrodite, however you want to see that, to cause Minos' own wife, Pasiphae, it's the easiest way to say that word, to fall head over heels in love with the great white bull. Ew. In a weird turn of events, Pasiphae would enlist Daedalus to build a hollow cow because she just could not figure out how she was going to embrace the bull without, damaging herself. So Daedalus was like, yeah, I guess I can build this for you. And there were some images of like painted vases and stuff. I don't know how accurate they were. We're not going there. But Pasiphae would hide inside this cow, and things would take their course when the bull found it. We're just going to leave it there. If this is the lore of ancient Greece, think about what went on in the everyday world. Like, this is messed up, even for some of the stuff that came out of Greece in this time period. This was messed. But, and as things would happen, especially in the old lore, Pasiphae would fall pregnant. Yeah, pregnant from a bull. But she still is really in love with this bull, so we're not exactly sure. The way the story kind of goes, this wasn't a one-time thing for her. It was several. Anyway, Pasiphae would, over time, birth a monster. Not just any monster. Of course not. We wouldn't be talking about it if it was just a common monster. This was a Styrian, also known as the Minotaur of Crete. Head of a bull, body of a man. I've got this picture somewhere. There we go. This dude, right here. And this is the monster that would end up in the labyrinth that Daedalus would also build. Daedalus had a lot of things going on right here. Beneath the palace of Crete. And I've talked about the Minotaur. Again, there's a video in the description if you're interested in checking that out. The Minotaur story is weird. I mean, not just from what we just described, but the overall story is odd. Anyway, back to Crete. So we have Captain Grumpy Pants here, tearing apart the land, banging the king's wife. And Hercules is sent to Crete to deal with said bull. But of course, King Eurystheus, being who he is, said, "Don't kill it, don't kill it, I want it." He wanted it in his stables. Like, this thing's destroying the entire country of Crete, and of course Eurystheus would want it. And Hercules didn't have to clean the stables, so you know what? Fine, I'll bring you your stupid bull. He chased this bull around for a while, finally caught it, got a hold of it, and that's when the fight was on. And I couldn't find a decent picture. There's a lot out there if you're interested. You can go check those out. But he wrestled and kind of fought, wrangled the bull. Eventually got his arm around its throat and choked it out. And that's how he got it to the ground. And from there, he would tie it up and send it back home. And if you've ever been to a branding of any form, it's not all fun and games. I've watched grown men try to flip these little guys. They only weigh like 100, 120 pounds, 150 pounds, some of them up to 200. Like I said, you get some of those ones that were born way early and they're huge. But you watch a grown, burly cowboy try to flip one of those things and it knocks him on his rear end. We're talking about a humongous fight here. This isn't something simple. I have a picture of a longhorn that we raised at my stepdad's place, but he was beautiful. We named him. He would come up to the fence when we called him till he got bigger and older, and then he was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." But he, at his shoulders, was a little bit taller than me, or right about my height. But you couldn't touch from arm to arm. You couldn't touch the tip points of his horns. He was gigantic, and he was small compared to this thing. So that, like I said, him's a big boy. But Hercules, being demigod, he could actually flip this thing over and choke it out. And we're guessing, 200 or 2-ton beast or better. So yeah, significant critter. But after the fight, Hercules would ship the bull back to Eurystheus, and this minion of Hera would not be the nicest of people. It is said he took the bull and released it to terrorize the countryside. But there are some that say the bull simply escaped and ran off and did its thing, destroying everything. I prefer the first story because I really don't like Eurystheus, and I feel like that would be something that he would do just to spite people. But the Cretan bull, it's not over yet. We're not done with the story. We're kind of done with Hercules' part in it, but we're not done yet. The Cretan bull would terrorize the land and end up near Athens in the city of Marathon. And then his name would change from the Cretan bull to the Marathonian bull, these names. And I'm just going to stick calling it the Cretan bull. It just makes more sense to me, so we're sticking with that. Hercules, like I said, he's kind of out at this point. But we have a new hero that comes on the scene. And we'll talk about some of his antics later, but we're just going to bring him in for this story and then put him back into back into the cupboard. And that is Theseus. And it's not something as simple as Theseus decided to wake up one day and go chase the bull, there was some time between the Cretan bull leaving Tiryns, where Eurystheus was king, and showing up in Marathon. And during this time, there was a great Olympic event. Of course there was. The Greeks liked the Olympics. I mean, they kind of started it, but this is when this is the time frame here. Minos and Pasiphae's son, I'm assuming pre-bull, he was Androgeus, these names, and he was really fit, very strong young man, and completed and won every single event he entered. That's impressive. And I have to say, that was, good for him. That's pretty cool. But this is where things fall apart for Crete and Athens. This victory, unfortunately, was very short-lived because someone in the Athenian court, and the names are all over the place as to who sent who and why it happened, so we're just going to say someone in the Athenian court basically tricked Androgeus to go after the bull. Well, the bull was rampaging through a part of the city, and this young lad didn't have a clue what he was doing, and the bull just took him out. We're done. No more. Well, Minos was devastated by the loss of his son, and over time became furious because he found out why his son had passed, and in his rage swore vengeance on Athens, and then proceeded to go to war. Victory soon followed, thus leading to Athens sending not just tribute of gold to keep them safe, but also sending 9 youths that would be offered to the Minotaur in perpetuity. Again, that's another story, but that's where we get that aspect. And this is where we go back to the Cretan bull. This is where Theseus actually comes into the story. Athens would call upon the hero because they needed someone to take out the bull, and at this point no one knew where Hercules was roaming around. So the Athenian king, called upon Theseus, and Theseus was not in Athens at the time. He was off visiting family or something. It doesn't really say, but he wasn't there. So he was coming back to Athens, and on the way there was an exceptionally violent storm that kicked up, and Theseus, he'd been traveling, he didn't want to be out in the rain, so he sought shelter with an elderly lady named Hecale. Sounds a lot like Hecate, and it killed me a little bit to go over this. There's no connection whatsoever, it's just a name similarity. And her name was spelled Hecale. This elderly woman would tell Theseus that he needed to offer sacrifice to Zeus then to help capture the bull, because Theseus at this point is not really immortal. He's not like a demigod or anything. He's just a hero. But as he was offering his sacrifice, Hecale would swear to sacrifice to Zeus after Theseus captured the bull in celebration. And as long as he brought the bull to her to let her see it before it was dealt with. The next day, Theseus would set off after the storm to chase the bull, and after a short time, with the blessings of Zeus, he would capture the bull, truss it up, and head back to see Hecale to show her the bull. The time frame here is a little weird because some sources said it was within a day or two, other people said it was a month. Time passed. But the sad part is, upon arriving back at Hecale's home, Theseus would find that she had passed. And it is said that he built a demi in her honor, or a demi in her honor. Well, this is a new term, so I looked it up. Guess what? We get to learn today. In ancient Greece, a demi is denoted as a suburb or a subdivision of Athens and other later city-states. This became important as to be a citizen, you had to prove membership of a demi, not just of a local tribe. Each demi or demi had a mayor, leader of sorts. They could be divided by religious alignment. You'd have your Lutherans, your Methodists, your Presbyterians, your pagans, all that. I mean, that's not literally what that was, because this was pre all of that, but that was the theory. You could have it divided by political factions, which were significantly different than what we would see today. You can even have a demi set up as a trade group. So you'd have the demi of the weavers, you'd have the demi of the carpenters, the demi of the masons. Yes, I went there. So that was how important these were. This was a huge thing. Tribes, wandering tribes, when they wanted to integrate into society, would form a demi to be able to join the citizenry of whatever area they were in. And over time, from what I was digging up, there were over 139 registered, recorded demis. So of course I went through the list, and there was one from the third period of Ptolemaeus called Hekale, Hekale. Spelling is a little bit different than what the original one is, and the lore associated with this particular demi was that it was named by Theseus. He established it in honor of Hekale with the sea. That is a humongous honor in that time to be named, or to have something named after you, especially something as important as that. So this is something that he would do while he would still have this bull trussed up. And then Theseus would eventually drag the bull back to Athens, at which point the Cretan bull would be sacrificed to Athena and Apollo. According to legend, this is the end. No more bull. We're done. But it's not quite the end. Of course, not with the Greeks. They like to do things a little chaotic. It is said by later lore enthusiasts, or however you want to explain that, that the constellation Taurus has been associated with the Cretan bull. And the lore on this one is a little bit weird, because it ties the lore of Europa, who is Minos' mother, being taken to Crete as Taurus the bull, which was Zeus originally. But that defies the timeline of events, unless Zeus was actually the Cretan bull all along and Poseidon was accomplice to the ruse, because the Cretan bull took Europa long before Minos was even born to Crete, or not the Cretan bull, Zeus did, but the Cretan bull was called out of the ocean later. That was Poseidon's bull. There's a lot of options and opinions here. And what's weird is when you start digging into it, because I started looking into the lore of how did Taurus become a constellation, what was the lore behind it, what bull was it, there are a lot of options as to how the name Taurus and the bull became what it was. The Cretan bull is just one of the variety of stories that ties into that constellation. So if you resonate and like that version of how the Taurus bull constellation came into existence, go for it. If you don't like it, then you can pick one of the many others that are out there as options, because there's several. And with that, we'll get started with the history lessons over. We're now hopping over because, the Cretan bull was born of supernatural means, if nothing else. It wasn't immortal, obviously, but it was a child of Poseidon, therefore it was of divine origin. So we will go ahead and do a tarot reading, because we're myth and tarot here, so this is the tarot part of myth and tarot. And I do these readings kind of as if the creature, the entity, or the being was sitting straight across from me, and we're looking at how things are going for them in their life in this moment. So we're going to start with the Significator card. Let me rearrange my screen here because it's not big enough. Wait. I know I should have had some of this done beforehand, but that's how things go when it comes to doing live streams. If you forget one thing until the last minute, and then it dawns on you didn't get it done, then you have to do it then. Where did it go? There it is. Okay, we'll move that over there. Okay, Um, our significator card, which is the Cretan bull itself. This is an interesting card. You don't see this one pop up as a significator. Basically, this is who the bull is. The bull is represented by death. Morta herself. So for this to be the card that this bull is, this bull was born to cause death and chaos and destruction. And I'm pretty sure that if Minos would have done his job in the first place and executed it like he said he was going to, a lot of people wouldn't have died later, including, well, the Minotaur that came later. So this bull, the Cretan bull, is basically set up to be a member of chaos and destruction from the get-go. And so when we were looking at this from that perspective, the Cretan bull was fairly demonic from day one. Like, this thing should have been put down. Like, it should have been sacrificed. Poseidon meant it not to be long-lived. The thing that crosses it is the Six of Chalices. With the Six of Chalices, there's a lot of energy here. It's saying that there's some observations that people were making about it. They're also saying that this was an emotional thing that crosses the bull. And when you look at the history and the lore of this bull, there's a lot of emotions tied to it. But we're working with the death card, and 6 is like just short of perfection type of energy. So you're still dealing with that hostility and that aggression. The things that are crossing it, it's just a lot of negative emotions, but it's negative emotions that other people can see and they're observing, and they're kind of pointing out. They're like the things that's crossing the bull is like, you should not have been here. This is not right. You should not be allowed to be here. So the bull didn't really, he didn't have a chance to start with. He was created to be destructive. So the higher self of the bull is the Knight of Pentacles. There's a lot of movement here, but it's movement in an interesting way. This bull, if he would have been taken care of appropriately, would have actually been a lot of positive movement. That's the higher aspect of this creature, because the Knight of Pentacles is saying there's a lot of good movement. It's working around the hearth and home, or kingdom in this situation, and there was some of that did occur, but it didn't happen the way they had hoped. So the Knight of Pentacles is saying, yeah, we're the champions, we're the ones winning here, but there's a lot of chaos going on down below. So yeah, on the surface it looked like you got everything you wanted, but underneath, not so much. The subconscious energy, or the shadow of the bull, and that's terrifying when you think that the bull itself is the death card, is the 21, the world. We've got a lot of big cards coming up here. This bull's shadow was, if you were to exist, take out the world. And boy, howdy did he. Did everything he could. He tried to destroy Crete. He tried to destroy Eurystheus' kingdom. He tried to destroy Athens. Like, if left alone, he would have destroyed the world. Literally, that was his goal. So his shadow is really saying complete annihilation. The world generally means a completed aspect, something in totality. And if that's the shadow that's coming forward, yeah, that's not good. His history, since he's passed over, we'll say in his lifetime, his youth, would have been the magician. So he was given tools to complete projects. He was given tools to improve. There was a point in his existence, the bull's existence, where he was not death incarnate. He wasn't destruction in a physical form. There was a time in this bull's existence when he was just a wee calf, little baby in Poseidon's stables, where he was gentle, where he was kind, where he wasn't aggressive, and he was given the tools to exist in that form. And again, if he would have been sacrificed accordingly, there probably would not have been the later chaos that occurred. His future is the Eight of Swords. This is where you get into that chaos energy. There's a lot moving. The swords are knowledge, intelligence, wisdom. It's the air element, and this is saying the swirling chaos that followed his popping up onto the dry land is because of things that should have been done in the past and weren't. It's also that shadow energy coming up, stirring the pot. So the Cretan bull was just doomed to failure. He should have been dealt with accordingly. Minos, you did a bad thing. So we are now looking at the bull's attitude. The bull's attitude is instinctive. The Two of Wands in this aspect is saying it's a coy, it's naive. In other words, it's not a conscious thought. This is not the will of an intelligent being. This is the rutting of a rabid animal. This thing's the animal, the bull itself was just not in a good place. He was bulky, mean, rampaging. Where'd he go? Like, just a grumpy old dude and wanted to destroy everything. But there's this naivety that comes with this card of the Two of Wands saying there's no intelligence here. This is just blind trust, blind following urges. It wasn't massive growth potential. The environment that the bull was brought into was the Knave of Chalices. There's some wisdom, there's some knowledge, but there's a lot of emotion tied into this. The Knave of Chalices also is the water element. So we're talking about the prince, so to speak, of water. Minos was a prince, so the environment that the bull was manifested into came from the water, Poseidon, into a watery kingdom, an island kingdom of Crete for Minos, and Minos at the time was one of the princes. So that all kind of ties into this, like, there's a lot of emotions there because Minos had a lot of things he was wanting in life, and Poseidon's anger, there's a lot of tension that was building throughout this whole thing, triggering the death card as his signifier. Hopes and fears, the Three of Wands. This particular, edit this card just a second, there we go. This guy, the bull, his hopes were just to exist in his own, do his own thing, be his bull self. The fear was death, but he was death. So it was not his death he was afraid of, or it was his death he was afraid of, not causing it to other people. But we also have this energy of just total abandonment. Like, let me go. That's the hope of just let me go and live my life and do my thing. But you're causing death and chaos and destruction, you behemoth. Time to go away. The overall outcome, which we already know, kind of, is the Ten of Wands. It's a completion of a cycle, but wands are fire. And when you offered sacrifice to Apollo or Athena, it was generally done on a fiery pyre. So the outcome for this poor bull was death, fire, being sacrificed. But being the Ten of Wands, we're talking about the end of a cycle, the end of a lifetime, the end of an event. So the overall outcome was the bull was done. It was over. No more bull. And so when you look at this type of a reading, it actually kind of tells the story anyway, because you have the death card being the bull itself, and if this card, if the death of the bull would have happened properly, there wouldn't have been the chaos coming from the Knight of Pentacles. There wouldn't have been the future of chaos destruction from the swords. And it would have sped up. Oops, I started stacking these already. It would have sped this card up faster without the rest of the people losing their lives, or without Minos' wife having her issues. Anywho, with that, we'll just kind of wrap things up here. If you enjoyed this stream, which is a little bit weird because I usually try to focus on just one topic, and I didn't quite do that this time because, well, there was two. Drop a like on the video, hit that subscribe button if you're new here, comment and let me know your thoughts if you're watching this when you watch this on replay. I'm just kind of playing with some of these ideas with the labors of Hercules, and I'm going to continue going through them because I think we're up to, this was number 7. I believe I've got 5 more, and I'll have to double check my lists, because I think I did a few of them out of order, and I hope I didn't do the rest of them out of order. But we'll be going through some more of those, and then I'm thinking that I'll just move into some of the Greek deities, because the Greek myths, especially the Greek gods, were fascinating as all get out, and wild as wild as you can imagine, really. But we'll kind of get into that later. So if comment, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you guys in the next stream. We'll be doing our normal videos the rest of the week. So with that, I will let you guys go. Have a great rest of your